Welcome back to Marriage Matters.
When your marriage matters to us. Today we're talking about communication and reconnection. We talked about the disconnect, and we want to talk a bit about trying to reconnect and maybe some of the issues that
Get it back together.
that you have trying to reconnect. So normally when you try to reconnect, you may fall into the crazy cycle, which is from the Love and Respect book, is where you get the crazy cycle. Although what I call the crazy cycle and what they call a crazy cycle is a little bit different. Yeah. Their crazy cycle is saying there's a standoff because he needs respect, she needs love. Who goes first? And then there's a standoff that sends you into a crazy cycle.
I ain't giving up. I ain't giving in.
When I'm saying a crazy cycle, it's a bunch of different crazy cycles that you can fall into besides the love and respect cycle. Because one thing I would call a crazy cycle is expecting things to change
When you have not done the work.
when you
No
haven't done anything
communication.
to change.
Or nothing.
You still respond in the same way. You still behave in the same way. You still communicate in the same way. But you think it's going to get better.
Still in the standoff.
Or you think something is going to change. And that's a crazy cycle. Doing the same thing, expecting different results. Not going to happen. You're going to keep on getting the same response if you keep on doing the same things. If you keep communicating out your emotions, yelling, screaming, or going to the other end of the spectrum, shutting down and being silent or giving a silent treatment, like you're going to continue to face the same
Issues.
over and over and over again.
And again.
So the problem sometimes, well, we're going to just talk about a few problems that you may face during the reconnect. Now, sometimes during the reconnect in a marriage, say you've been separated or for a little while or something like that, and then, you come back together and you kind of miss each other and things go good for a while. And you kind of do better for maybe 30 days or a few weeks, 6 weeks, and you're right back in that crazy cycle where now you're separating again. You're leaving. The communication is bad. Everything is an argument. You're always on the defensive. It's no conflict resolution. Nothing has changed. So sometimes people end up in a crazy cycle of running,
staying,
and running back and forth. And each time you create that cycle because when you leave and come back, it's good for a while. Like that's the only time it gets better. So you leave and come back because you want it to work and it's better for a little while. But now I got to leave again so I can show you.
But there's no work that's been done. People use they have that saying that time heals all wounds. Time doesn't heal all wounds. If you get a cut on your hand or whatever the case may be and you don't get it taken care of, time gonna bring in gangrene. You might have to get the hand cut off. So time don't heal all wounds.
Right, and that separating and coming back and separating and coming back is a crazy cycle without getting any work done. If you do separate, you need to be getting counseling, one-on-one or couples counseling together, right? You need to be doing some type of work during those times if you want it to change. You can't just separate, vacate, take a mini vacation or take a break, come back, things is good for a moment, things go bad, separate, take a break. Like, that's a crazy cycle.
Process doesn't change. If both parties' thought process is the same, there's nothing going to change. You got to start. You got to start with your thinking. You have to begin to think that it's worth it, and begin to change the way you think, or begin to see it a different way. I've seen with people who have separated and they thought that just because there was time spent away, or whatever the case may be, that change was going to take place. If there hasn't been any change in the thinking, the mindset, or the way each spouse does things, nothing's going to change. It's going to be the exact same thing.
It's inevitable. So one key thing about trying to reconnect that we need to understand and know is it's going to take work. You have to do the work. If you want to reconnect in your relationship, you're going to have to get to some deep underlying issues more than likely. So we talked about the disconnect and creating a gap because it's one issue on top of another, on top of another, on top of another. So in order to reconnect and to seal the gap, to resolve the conflict, you got to get back to the root of the problem.
You can't just sweep it under the rug. We sweep an issue under the rug and thinking like, okay, I just don't want to deal with it. Just not dealing with it and sweeping it under the rug. If you have a floor that you constantly sweeping and you constantly sweeping the dirt under the rug, before you know it, you're gonna have a heel under the rug or just packed down dirt. So it's not changing anything.
You're gonna have a mess, and it's probably gonna stink, thinking. It's gonna be a mess, and it's probably gonna have a smell. It's gonna be a smelly mess. Okay. So we have to learn how to deal with the messes, the conflicts, the issues. We have to learn how to resolve the issues and be able to have an adult, mature conversation. Like, we have to learn our defense. The reason we get on defensive due to triggers from a kid to mom and them, to whatever those things that's being triggered. We have to learn ourselves as well as our spouses. That's the problem a lot of time with the reconnect. We're on the defensive because we automatically feel like when they come back or when we're trying to reconnect that there's some underlying motive, or that they just saying what I want to hear or what they need to say to get back or to stay. Mm-hmm. When they're there because they want to be there and they really want to work it out, but they don't have the wisdom, knowledge, understanding, or emotional capacity or emotional understanding, and neither do you. So then when you try to reconnect and you try to fix that gap from the disconnect, you're going to have a hard time.
That canyon.
Yes. It's going to be hard, and it's going to be hard work. You're going to have to learn how to fight fair. There's another book, another resource called Fight Fair, How to Resolve Conflict in a Healthy Manner.
And it's definitely getting the resources, because the Bible says this: we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the words of our testimony. Somebody has been where you are. So if someone has been where you are and God has answered their prayers or whatever, or brought them through it, then they can tell you some of the things that they have done to get through that circumstance and that situation that saved their marriage, that healed their marriage, or whatever the case may be. So a lot of times we have to get rid of the pride and get the help or the resources that we need, and admit that we don't know everything. We're limited at what we do know. You only know it from your perspective, from what you learned in your spirit, your circle, pretty much what you grew up in. You seen your mother do it a certain way, you seen your father do it a certain way, and so you figure because that's what you saw, that's the way that it's handled. But it's not always true or the best way to handle it. But get the resources that can help you take your marriage to another level, that can bring forth the healing, that can give you some understanding on what's going on in your relationship. A lot of times we have to remove ourselves in a sense and begin to look at it from another perspective, and just try to see what your spouse is saying and not just be selfish. It's just like, I don't want to hear what you have to say. I just want you to hear me. If that's the case, then you're not going to get anywhere.
Well, you wrong and I'm right. Which brings me to the opposites attract. We talked about the opposites attracting before in a different session, but when we talk about opposites, we have to remember that we're opposites. He's male, I'm female. We're opposites. We don't think the same. We don't act the same. We don't respond the same. We're not the same emotionally. We're opposite. So whatever he does, I'm the opposite of that. So if he pulls in, I'm bagging in. Or if I bag in, he pull in. Like it's just opposites attract.
What works for you?
So don't expect your spouse to respond or act the way you do to issues, which we talked about this a little bit before as well. But I think it's important in the process of trying to reconnect that you really understand and that we drive it home that you are opposites. He's going to do it opposite of you. She's going to respond and do it opposite of you. You know what I'm saying? He's going to be opposite. She's going to be opposite of him. We're opposites. Period. Understand that. Please understand that there's a big difference between male and female, left brain, right brain, the mind, the thinking, the response system, the emotional response system, and the mental response system, as well as the spiritual response systems. Like, again, I call it the dance. This is all a part of learning that dance because you have to understand the basics. Everything we've been teaching and continue to teach up until this point is basic information that most couples do not have, know, or even understand.
This is true.
So you have to know when you say, I shouldn't have to ask. Yes, you do. You're opposite. They don't think the same. I don't think like you. You don't think like me. I have to ask.
And if you're going to go that route, then you're expecting your husband or your spouse to be God. God said you have not because you ask not. If God is not going to move because you didn't ask for it, how could we put that on our spouse to say, oh, well, you should have knew I wanted that, or you should have knew to do that, or whatever the case may be. I shouldn't have to ask. And when it first happened with me and my wife, I'm like, wait a minute, what? And so, with us teaching marriage classes, whatever, throughout the years, I find out it's kind of a common theme with the wives. Like, no, I shouldn't have to ask. He know. A lot of times, people are not even thinking or cognizant of what you want or what you desire, or even if it's something that they normally do. Like, you seen the garbage can full, you should have taken it. You don't know what's on that man's mind, what he's going through, what he's thinking, or, you probably, he should say. A lot of times men are thinkers and they try to fix it. So a lot of times a man not going to tell you, this is going through my mind right now. He's too busy. He might be totally oblivious to the garbage because he's thinking of an issue and he's thinking on how he's trying to solve the issue. It's not that really, I'm going to stick it to her and leave the stinky, nasty trash in the house so I can smell it as well as her, as well as you, or, the spouse to smell it as well. That's not the case. It's a mere oversight.
And the same way you want that stinky, smelly trash taken out, it's the same way you should want those issues and conflicts and mess that's in your marriage resolved. And then, as bad as you want that trash taken out because of the smell, you should want your marriage fixed. So until next time, we're going to continue talking about reconnecting your marriage. God bless.